world is on the cusp of an energy crisis. For the last few decades, the human population has boomed, and demand for heating, transport and energy has dramatically increased. Society has grown dependent on fuel to function. By far the main source of fuel is oil, the black gold. It is the most valuable natural resource on the planet. In recent years, the price of oil has ballooned. In 2000, the typical cost of oil was $35 per barrel. In 2012, the price had rocketed to $112. The industry says this is because of the unprecedented rise in demand, and supplies are running out as oil wells are drying up. But the International Energy Agency says that the world's oil supply was 87.1 million barrels a day in 2012, much more than the 75.2 million barrels produced each day in 2000. So why did prices increase so dramatically to reflect depleted stores of oil when the supply of oil actually increased? Could it be that the oil industry is sitting on vast hidden reserves? Could this be the world's biggest con? The oil industry justifies high prices with the peak oil theory. This is the idea that there is a limited supply of oil in any given reserve, and that technology will get better at producing it, so there will be a peak period of production before the oil begins to run out. This theory was formed in 1956 by geoscientist M. King Hubbard. While working for Shell, he calculated that the United States would reach its highest production of oil by 1971, and he was right. He predicted the world's highest rate of oil production would be in 1995. But since then, oil industry experts have continually moved the predicted date of peak oil production. The current prediction is for world oil production to peak by 2030. Because of this, prices are expected to remain high for the next 2 decades in order to reduce demand and stop the oil from running out too soon. Once the peak has been exceeded, prices will skyrocket again to reflect the limited supply. Author Jerome Corsi claims that peak oil production is a false prediction created by the oil industry. Because the predicted date is constantly moving and is determined by scientists working for the industry, conspiracy theorists claim the oil industry is using the peak oil theory as an excuse to charge exorbitant prices for oil for the next 50 years. Oil companies admit setting aside up to 2 million barrels of oil each day for future use. In 2014, Goldman Sachs estimated that the rate of crude oil being produced is increasing nearly twice as fast as the rate of world demand. Conspiracy theorists claim this is clear evidence that the oil industry is lying. They have more than enough oil and are pretending to have decreased supplies simply so they can rake in the cash. Corsi and his supporters claim there is in fact an almost infinite supply of oil. Specifically, they claim it is possible to synthesize oil using the Fischer-Tropsch process. The Fischer-Tropsch process was discovered by German scientists during World War II. It is a reaction that converts hydrogen and carbon monoxide to liquid fuels. It needs coal, methane or biomass to work. But the US Department of Energy confirms that Fischer-Tropsch fuels burn cleaner than other liquid fuels and can serve as a substitute for diesel in trucks and even jet engines. According to the National Energy Technology Laboratory, these synthetic fuels have been researched by Shell, Chevron, ExxonMobil and Sasol. But only South Africa has deployed vehicles with synthetic fuels derived from coal for the past 30 years. Jerome Corsi says Fischer-Tropsch fuels haven't been deployed in the US because Big Oil has lobbied and bribed successive governments to stick with conventional crude oil provided by the industry. The industry says synthetic fuels have not become mainstream because the manufacturing process is slow and too expensive. The Department of Energy says it is researching methods to make these fuels less expensive and cleaner. They have given no estimate as to when this might be achieved. Despite the dangerous competition posed by synthetic fuels, the price of oil has remained at record highs for the past decade. There is strong evidence to suggest this is because of good old-fashioned price rigging. Up to 80% of the world's oil reserves rest in the hands of a group of nations who have formed an international trade bloc to regulate the oil industry. They call themselves the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC. Each of OPEC's 12 members agree on standard price rates and, more importantly, decide upon annual quotas for oil production. This means that despite demand for oil and sufficient oil reserves, if OPEC decides it won't produce enough crude oil in any given year, it will do so, and it will charge what it likes for each barrel.
The price of oil is a market determined process.
Normally, this kind of cartel action is prohibited under competition laws. However, because OPEC is an organization of countries with nationalized reserves, not companies, its members have sovereign immunity and are not subject to competition or antitrust laws. Between 1999 and 2007, 16 bills were put before Congress to make OPEC's anti-competitive price fixing illegal. All were overwhelmingly defeated by Congress. Even if they had succeeded, President George W. Bush pledged to veto any anti-OPEC legislation. Instead, commentators believe that in 2003 Bush led the invasion of OPEC's most anti-American member, Iraq, in an effort to give the US more control of the Middle Eastern oil fields. However, this has yet to be proven against the official reason for the war, that is, the desire to remove weapons of mass destruction from Saddam Hussein's arsenal. Western oil companies may also be acting illegally to ensure high prices. In 2014, the Thomson Reuters Foundation published a report revealing that companies including Shell, ExxonMobil, Chevron and BP paid $3 billion to the US government to settle allegations that they had systematically underreported the value of resources they mined from federal and Native American leases since the turn of the century. In 2013, a class action lawsuit was filed against BP, Shell, Statoil and energy trading company Vitol, accusing them of fixing the price of oil since 2002. The lawsuit is ongoing. The industry says prices have remained high because the production of conventional crude oil is declining. Increasing amounts of oil are derived from shale rock, deep sea wells and oil sands. Consequently, since 2005, the oil industry has spent more and more money on exploration and development, from $250 billion in 2005 to $700 billion in 2012. This, they claim, is the real cause behind increased oil prices. Today, demand is falling and oil prices in 2015 are expected to fall to $85 per barrel. According to industry expert Steve Koppitz, this is partly a reflection of the changing landscape of the energy industry. Since the 1980s, developed governments have increasingly moved towards renewable energy sources like wind and solar power, or alternative non-renewables like nuclear energy and natural gas. With electrical cars and public transport steadily increasing in popularity, oil is becoming less necessary for the Western world to operate. Simply put, lifestyles are changing to suit a world without oil. Whether or not the oil industry is hiding vast reserves of oil in order to inflate their profits, or suppressing alternative methods of fuel production with the same goal, there is certainly strong evidence to suggest that the price of oil has been rigged in one way or another for over 40 years.